Hello and welcome back to Story here, and wow, it's been a while since I said the intro, but I feel like it's justified because today's video is special. It's the 2021 Channel Rewind, my end of the year culmination of everything I reviewed this year, movies, shows, anime, manga, you name it. I'll be naming some of my top picks as well as some of my least favorite picks, and yeah, I hope you're excited. I know I'm excited. I've been super pumped to make this video. I've been planning it for a long time, and it's definitely going to be the biggest video on my channel so far, so I'd appreciate if you show some support, subscribe and whatnot, and make sure to stick around towards the end. I will be including some of my future plans on what I would like to do with this channel. But anyways, as always, before getting into the video, I need to clarify a few disclaimers. First of them being that the conditions of what qualifies into this video, because you'll notice very quickly that the stuff I'm reviewing in this video aren't released in 2021. The only condition that makes them qualify here is that they have to be covered by me and reviewed by me of this year. That's why it's my channel rewind, not really like the year rewind, because if it was a yearly rewind, I would just cover things on the channel. So there's that. Some people will be pretty pissed, be like, oh, why don't you cover everything of this year? It seemed a bit unfair, but hey, this is my channel. I do whatever I want. And a few 2022 videos will be included in the channel, but those videos are mainly videos that were delayed from 2021. Like, I had already watched the subject matter and formulated my review and everything before the year ended, so I feel like they should still qualify for this video. And lastly, there will be no game reviews because I only reviewed one game up until now, and I feel like it's unfair. How will I give my top pick and least favorite pick with one game? So there's that. And yeah, and I think I should take this one last opportunity to clarify my specials, because so far I've had my Halloween special, my Christmas special, and now I have this special. So my future special I'm planning to doing, of course, are the Valentine's special, maybe something romance related for that, and a summer special when summer finally does come around, because I feel like that's also worth celebrating, don't you think? So that makes in total, I think, like 5 special per year, which I feel like are fine. So yeah, there you go, and look forward to when that comes around during the year. So without further ado, let's get into our first category, which is the movies. So let's start off with the first movie I reviewed on this channel that kickstarted everything, that being Gravity. I remember giving Gravity an 8 out of 10, and Gravity, I don't think my opinion has really changed on it. I still feel like it's a solid movie, a solid space movie, solid story, just an overall enjoyable experience, and I feel like I can definitely go back and watch that again, so nothing new to say there, I guess. Next is the Emoji Movie, and this was quite a bold choice, and I even mentioned in my video, I just wanted to do something really bad to kind of kick things off, something fun, and I picked the Emoji Movie because why not? And as expected, it was really bad, just corporate pandering. But now looking back at it, maybe I was a bit too harsh. Maybe I feel like the animation is at least a little pleasing, even though I said it was basic, but that's the only new thing I can say about it. It's still a 1 out of 10 for me. Truly one of the worst movies, and I guess, and you can definitely expect to see this in my worst picks. If it's not on the top 3, then it's probably going to be in my honorable mentions. Anyways, next we have 300. Now 300 was a really interesting movie. It's very stylized, it's very different from your normal structure, especially because it's a Zack Snyder movie, but I felt like 300 was overall enjoyable. I know that might be a little bit controversial because 300 in general is a controversial movie. Some people hate it, some people love it. I'm on the love it side, but not too much. I feel like it's just definitely pure fun. And subsequently, later down the year, I did 300 Rise of an Empire, and honestly, this movie is just a shell of its original self. It just blatantly copies a lot of the things that 300 did, but does them so poorly, and you can definitely see the effect of missing Zack Snyder has. I think Zack Snyder didn't direct this movie, right? I'll have to check later, but you can definitely feel that it's a lot different and just feels like a blatant copy of the first one. Anyways, on to the first horror movie that I did of the year, and that's 8 out of 10, The Exorcist. And like I mentioned, just a great movie. Overall, it's very scary. It definitely lives up to a lot of the claims that people make of this being like the scariest movie. Do I think this is the scariest movie? No. Do I even think it's the best horror movie? No. But do I think it's a great horror movie? Yes, it certainly is, and it did the whole faith aspect before a lot of the current movies did, so I can definitely give it credit for that. Anyways, next is Birdman. Birdman is definitely the most unusual movie I've done in this entire year. I gave it a 7 out of 10, which I feel like, yeah, definitely deserved. Maybe I'd lower it to a 6 out of 10 now, just because of how weird it is. Maybe I wouldn't like that weirdness watching it again, but overall, I feel like Birdman is definitely those types of movies that if you're really into like, if you're really a film buff type of guy, you would definitely love Birdman. But your average audience watching Birdman would just be like, well, cool, and then just walk out. You know, I don't mean like walk out of the theater. I just mean like, you know, just walk and go home once the I don't know why I'm clarifying this. Anyways, on to the next topic. The next movie being Wolf Children. Now, Wolf Children was like the first movie that I actually loved on this channel. It was the first 9 out of 10 I gave, and truly it's amazing. I just love anime movies in general. They have this sort of special charm on them, and Wolf Children is no different from that. It's so beautiful, so amazing, and so emotional too. I think it's the first movie that made me cry out of the ones over here, so definitely a special place in my heart for that. After that, I did Incredibles 2, which is a 7 out of 10, and like I mentioned, I already watched the first Incredibles movie. I thought it was pretty good, and Incredibles 2, the same thing. A lot of people claim that the Incredibles series are like the masterpiece, best works of animation ever. I disagree. I think they're good movies, like I said, but not the best in my opinion. I mean, everybody has their opinions, but that's just mine. But Incredibles 2, overall, my opinion doesn't really change on that. Next, I watched my first Bollywood movie, Gajani. Now, I used to watch Bollywood movies all the time as a kid, and I used to love them, but now, you know, I'm kind of sick of them, and I've kind of grown used to them and all their cliches and whatnot, and I'm really starting to detest their musical formula. And Gajani, although it has a lot of cool concepts about the whole memory loss thing, I think overall it just really fails on execution. It's just so messy. I feel like if Gajani was more focused on a certain specific topic or a certain issue, it would be a lot better, like this really grim, dark thriller movie. You don't get much of those in Indian cinema nowadays. Anyways, next on to my 10th movie being Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Now this movie I gave a 9 out of 10 because it was just so funny. Even though, sure, story-wise it doesn't hold up to other like 8 out of 10s or 9 out of 10s, that's kind of not really the point of Monty Python. It's just supposed to be a super fun, hilarious ride, and that's what it delivers. I absolutely love this movie, and I recommend anybody check it out. It still holds up today despite its age. Next, we got The Road, which I gave out a 3 out of 10. And fun fact, I actually watched The Road because I had to do like a book assignment on it. And I thought, hey, why not read the movie too, and then I can review that on my channel. And the book I thought was really fairly okay, but the movie kind of just like fails in a lot of its aspects. I give it a 3 out of 10. It has a lot of cool concepts, but like all book adaptations, it's very messy and has to leave out certain things that really does impact its story. Anyways, next we got Old Boy, my first South Korean movie I reviewed on the channel, the 2003 one. And I give this a 7 out of 10, but despite that, Old Boy still, in my opinion, has the best ending of any of the movies I have reviewed of this year. Truly, I want to give Old Boy an 8 or 9 out of 10, or even a 10 out of 10, but it's really that first half of the movie that really holds it back. It's so boring. Like, I was actually kind of falling asleep during the first half, but then that ending completely turned my entire perspective upon this movie. So, it's not for the lighthearted, but it's definitely a great movie. Next, Titanic. Titanic is an 8 out of 10. What can you say? One of the highest grossing movies of all time. And it's by James Cameron. Of course, it'll be good. And yeah, a lot of people claim this as like some generic romance. But in my opinion, it's not that generic at all. It's kind of unique in a lot of the ways, despite all the claims. So there's that. After that, we got Space Jam. Now, Space Jam might be the most controversial opinion I have about movies. I give it a 1 out of 10. A lot of people love this movie, and I remember watching this as a kid. Or did I watch this as a kid? I don't know. I think I watched the clips of this as a kid, but I never watched the full movie in one sitting. But Space Jam in overall can be fun for kids, but looking back at it, a lot of people definitely get blinded by nostalgia, but it's just so weird. Like, there's so many weird things happening. It's just purely random. So 1 out of 10, yeah, my opinion doesn't change. Now, Space Jam: A New Legacy, I reviewed a couple months later. And in my opinion, this was a little bit better, which is also another controversial opinion. A lot of people claim that the second movie is worse than the first. Excuse me. But it does a lot of things better, and it actually feels like a real movie instead of jumbled mess of events. Anyways, following Space Jam, I watched Django Unchained. Now, Django was the first 10 out of 10 movie I gave on this channel. But after looking back on it, I didn't really like it as much to be a masterpiece. You know, in my opinion, masterpiece, I hold that up to a very high regard. So I can't just give it out to anything. And in my opinion, the Django just didn't hold that up. So I lowered it back down to a 9 out of 10. Still a great movie, better than like 90% of the movies on this list. But yeah, once again, just fails to hold out on second viewing, in my opinion. Next, we got Wonder Woman 1984. Now, Wonder Woman 1984, I remember watching the original Wonder Woman and liking it quite a lot, especially since that was around the period that DC was kind of flopping a lot, is the best way to put it, but Wonder Woman definitely saved them. So I was really awaiting its sequel, and I'm surprised I hadn't watched it up until now. But now that I did, Wonder Woman 1984 is pretty alright. I don't think it's as good as its original. It's a little worse, but it definitely takes a lot more risks, which I appreciate. And if they're going to make a third Wonder Woman, I hope they take even more risks and just go completely wild with the story, because I can definitely see Wonder Woman as a story just being completely nuts. So I hope the director takes a lot more liberties. Anyways, I also reviewed another DC movie this year, that's Man of Steel. And the reason I did Man of Steel was because I haven't watched any of the DCEU. One of my main goals of this channel was to complete the DCU and review it on the channel. So Man of Steel was my second step of doing that. And I gave Man of Steel a 2 out of 10. I thought this was an absolute garbage movie. There was nothing really redeeming about it. It's just so... It's like a Michael Bay movie, honestly, you know? And it's pretty controversial, considering I think that's my most controversial video on my channel. But my opinion still stands. I don't like Man of Steel. Deal with it. Anyways, after that, we got, what was it? 12 Angry Men. Yes, 12 Angry Men was an absolute excellent movie. And, yeah, 9 out of 10. I think it's probably the closest thing to a 10 out of 10 on the channel. But personally, it's amazing. It's so tight-packed. I don't think there's any flaws with the story. But it's just, I think, like, the presentation-wise, when it comes to the soundtrack especially, that really holds it back from being a full masterpiece. Like, if 12 Angry Men had a super memorable soundtrack, I would have definitely given it a 10 out of 10. Anyways, next on High School Musical. The first one, at least. Now, High School Musical, I remember saying that it was cheesy yet enjoyable or something. I think that was my title. And my thing still stands, but I actually think that High School Musical, I probably did it a little bit too dirty. I probably should have given it a 4 out of 10, especially because I know a lot of people make fun of High School Musical as being this sort of kids movie and just super unrealistic, but who cares, man? It's just fun, and that's all that really matters in the end, you know, if a movie's fun. And High School Musical definitely deserves that, so I probably will raise it to 4 out of 10, but I gotta watch it at least like one more time before I make that decision. Anyways, for Seven. Now, Seven was a great movie, absolutely excellent. There's a reason why this movie's taught around film schools everywhere, especially that one box scene. I can definitely say that's a masterpiece, just complete 10 out of 10. Excuse me. But yeah, does my opinion on 7 change now? And do I think 7 goes anything beyond an 8 out of 10? Also, no, it's a great movie, but it could have definitely been a lot more. Anyways, on to Demon Slayer, the movie, Mugen Train. And I remember this is the point when I was completely finished all of my genre reviews. And what I mean by that is I wanted to review one movie every single genre before I started getting more diverse. And once 7 was complete, I pretty much was done that, so I was free to do whatever I want. So I started off by doing Demon Slayer the movie, because that was one movie that I was really looking forward to watch, especially since I loved its season 1 and I really like its manga too. So yeah, I was definitely looking forward to this. And I mean, it's not as great as season 1. It's a 6 out of 10. I feel like there's a lot of cool action, and it definitely could have deserved being a 7 out of 10. But one thing that really ticked me off is the exposition. People would just randomly say things out of nowhere, like, oh, this is my ability and this is how you defeat it. Like, what? It just doesn't make any sense when movies do this, and Demon Slayer is probably the worst offender by far. Next, we got The Empty Man, and I actually watched this movie after seeing Chris Duckman's review on it and recommending other people to watch it. I gave it a chance, and wow, it was definitely great. 7 out of 10, probably the most unusual horror movie I have ever watched. It's so unique, and I definitely agree with Chris Duckman. I have no idea why this one flopped. It's probably because of the marketing, let's be honest. Most things flop because of the marketing, not because of anything else. But anyways, after this I watched Blame, and I gave Blame a 6 out of 10. Blame, I don't really have much of an opinion. I know the movie is a lot different from the manga, and I definitely prefer the movie over the manga any day, which is definitely very controversial. I'll talk about this when I get into the manga section. But I did not love Blame. I found Blame tolerable, and I at least liked it a little bit. But overall, Blame just really suffers from a lot of character issues. And yeah, in general, it just feels like a story without any characters. Kind of like Tenet in a way. Anyways, after Blame came Halloween, and this is when I did my three specials, my first three being The Conjuring 1, 2, and 3, and I gave them 8, 9, and 4 respectively. Conjuring 1 is a classic. I remember Conjuring 1 is probably the one I remember the most. It's so unique, an 8 out of 10. And now Conjuring 2, when I watched that, was a surprise. I remember when I first watched it, I didn't think it was better than the original movie, and I think that's the general consensus. I don't know. But after watching it, I think it was absolutely amazing, and definitely one of the best horror movies, and I think this takes the cake for the highest rated horror movie that I've given on this channel so far, so I think it definitely deserves it. But then we got Conjuring 3, The Devil Made Me Do It, and this was I don't even want to talk about this, man. I love the Conjuring series so much, and I hate it when horror movie franchises just go downhill from their sequels, and number 3 is no different. I know a lot of people like this movie, but personally, it just doesn't have the same scariness and vibe that I associate with the original Conjuring. I think it would have been better if they made a spin-off series of somebody else doing this case, but yeah, that's my opinion, 4 out of 10. Now after this, I did my first review, my new gen reviews, and by new gen reviews I mean like reviews that I did of movies that recently came out. Because most of these videos and reviews I did, most of the movies I did reviews on, had already been released months or years prior. So Dune was the first one, and I'm glad it was my first. It was so creative, so cool, and definitely one of the most hyped up movies. So I was looking forward to see what it was all about. And in my opinion, Dune's cool, but it doesn't do anything extraordinary like people were kind of hyping it up to be. In my opinion, Dune, the first movie, is at least just very much of a setup movie. There's not much that really kicks off a plot, but I feel like when the whole series and franchise is complete, I will probably look back at the original Dune with like a newfound sense of, I guess, wonder or amazement, because then it'll feel like an actual, complete movie. Anyways, after that we got Tumbad. Now Tumbad was my second Bollywood movie I did, and I actually liked this one compared to Gajani, especially because of how unique it was. Even though it was a musical, it did a lot of things that were different, and I remember when Tumbad first came out, it also captivated the Indian audience perfectly. Like, a lot of people thought this was one of the most innovative movies of the year, and I definitely have to agree. Like, you don't get movies like this coming out of Bollywood that often, but I'm glad it did. 7 out of 10. Yeah, let's move on. Now we got Spider-Man No Way Home, and this was the first review I did after a long break. So, yeah, and Spider-Man No Way Home was the second 10 out of 10 movie, and yeah, I feel like I definitely agree it should deserve a 10 out of 10. So that makes it technically the only 10 out of 10 movie that I've given on the channel, because remember Django, I raised it down to a 9 out of 10, and I don't feel like doing that for No Way Home. And in my opinion, No Way Home is the best Spider-Man movie ever. Spider-Verse is good, but I don't think it's as good as this. Spider-Man 2 is also good, but I don't think it's as good as this. In the end, my opinion, if you think they're better, feel free to let me know in the comments below and why, and I'll be happy to respond to you, I guess. And then the last movie I did of the year was A Christmas Carol, 9 out of 10. And even though I released this in 2022, it was planned for the holidays, so please forgive me for that. But Christmas Carol was a great movie, a classic. Some people will say that it's maybe I rated it too high because of my nostalgia for the movie, but I don't care. I love this movie regardless. So that evens out to 31 movies in the year, and I'm pretty proud of that, and I hope to definitely increase that number for the next year. Now on to my, what should I start with? Let's start with my bottom picks. On to my dishonorable mentions, I guess. The Road, I feel like The Road definitely deserves a dishonorable mention just because of how much it butchered the original story, and it's just kind of like a shell of its original self, 300 Rise of an Empire, same thing here. It just feels like a blatant copy of the original movie without any of their charm. And then Gajani, I would feel like Gajani's here, like I mentioned, it just feels so unfocused, it's so chaotic, and that's why I feel like it should deserve a mention here. So anyways, on to my bottom 3. Now the reason I picked 3 here instead of like 4 or 5 is because just deal with it, it's my channel, I do whatever I want. But then again, we only have 31 movies, I don't think it'll be fair to pick 10 movies each for top and bottom. But without any further rambling, let's get on to it. At number 3, we got Man of Steel. So Man of Steel, 2 out of 10. I definitely think it deserves the 3rd place title. It does a lot of things worse. A lot of things really, really bad is what I'm trying to say. And it just feels like a superhero origin story done horribly, horribly wrong. Next, we got number 2, Space Jam. Space Jam was an absolute chaotic mess. And yeah, there's nothing really likable about this movie except that it's a little bit enjoyable here and there, and I really like the OST, the Space Jam one. That OST has been stuck in my head since forever. I don't know when it got stuck in my head, but it's kind of just being there now. And then finally at number 1 we got the Emoji Movie. Emoji Movie, also nothing to like about it. And the reason I think I can give this movie a higher place than Space Jam is because the Space Jam is at least a little bit likable here and there and a little bit fun and wholesome, while the Emoji Movie it's just cringe, man. Like you don't feel good watching this movie. Anyways, enough with my bottom few movies. Let's get into my top movies. A few honorable mentions. Old Boy, like I mentioned, one of the best endings ever made, so I definitely thinks it deserves a mention, even though it's not a 9 out of 10 or even an 8 out of 10. The Conjuring 2, the best horror movie I reviewed, and probably one of the best horror movies I've ever seen in my life. Monty Python and the Holy Grail, probably the funniest movie I've seen in my life. It's so hilarious. I love it, and honestly, it's surprising how well it holds up. And finally, 12 Angry Men, just because of how tight the story is. I think overall, out of everything, it might have the best story, but like I mentioned, there's just a few other things that definitely hold it back. So now let's get into my actual top 3. At number 3, we have Wolf Children. Wolf Children, I think, just a great movie. I think what really carries is how emotional it is, and its relations with family dynamics and whatnot is so cool. I definitely love it, and this is why I love anime movies in general. Next at number 2, we got Django Unchained. Now, Django Unchained is an amazing movie as well. Even though I gave it a 9 out of 10 and it's not, even though I gave it a 10 out of 10 and it's not a 10 out of 10 anymore, I still feel like it's an amazing movie and definitely worth the watch. And finally, at number 1, we have Spider-Man No Way Home, the only masterpiece I have here. Truly one of the best movies, and I'm so surprised that it came out this late in the year. Like, had I not watched this, my list would have been completely different. So I'm glad I did. One of the best movies, and reminds me once again why I am a Spider-Man fan. So before I end off the movie section, let's take a look at some of the stats of this year. On screen, you should be seeing a graph by now of my different ratings, and it's pretty unusual. I expected it to look a bit more like, a pyramid, but that's fine. You don't always see an even amount of movies every year. And do I think like 7, 8, and 9 are definitely the most heaviest categories, and I guess that makes sense. I usually only watch a movie if it's good anyways. I don't bother wasting my time unless it's bad, unless it's the Emoji Movie and I want to feel bad. But yeah, so it makes sense why most movies are good. And all my ratings pretty much average out to a 6.3, which I think is a good rating. I don't want to be in the negatives category because that'll make me seem like one of those people who just shit on movies just for fun. I'm not really that type of guy, but I don't want to give everything a super high rating because that just makes me seem naive. So 6 out of 10, I feel like it's a good range, and I'm pretty happy with that. So I think that's it with the movies. Let's move on to TV shows. So wow, that section was quite long. I mean, 31 movies definitely take some time to elaborate on them. I don't want to skim over each one. But compared to last one, this is TV shows, and I'm not going to spend that much time here because considering I only watched 3 TV shows, mostly because I started it quite late in my channel career, I guess you could say, but I definitely plan on upping my game for the next year. Anyway, starting off with the first TV show being Invincible. This is what kicked it all off, and it was super popular when I first reviewed it, I think. Actually, I think I reviewed it a couple weeks after the popularity died, but who cares? Invincible, I give a 6 out of 10. I still feel that way. I remember a lot of people claim Invincible as some sort of masterpiece and so subversive and whatnot. I agree with the subversive part, but as a masterpiece, no. It just feels like a regular show that's super dark, but also does a lot of things wrong, in my opinion. But Omni-Man's, I think, a cool character, and I definitely love that ending. It was so, whoa, out there. And the first episode also really cements you and goes, whoa, that type of deal. But yeah, Invincible, aside from the first and last episode, the rest of them were kind of forgettable, in my opinion. Next is number 2, Squid Game. That's the second one I watched, and Squid Game I thought was absolutely amazing. Just purely, I watched this right when the hype was, I think, the biggest, and I give it a 9 out of 10, and I still believe that holds true for today. Squid Game is so emotional, has such a deep message, and it's just an overall amazing show. Even though it's South Korean, I'm glad it's actually South Korean because it exposes a lot of people to South Korean media. First when what was it? Oh yeah, Parasite. When Parasite was first nominated, that exposed a lot of people to South Korean media. Now this, and also music stuff like BTS is helping. So I definitely can appreciate people are getting into this stuff a lot more because South Korean movies a whole other level of quality, in my opinion. And the last TV show I watched of this year is Chernobyl. And Chernobyl, I didn't think I could go anywhere higher than Squid Game, but Chernobyl somehow did that. I gave Chernobyl a 10 out of 10, and it's an absolute masterpiece. I still think that holds up today. Chernobyl was so good. 6 episodes or 5, and every single one of them is so amazing. I don't think I'll ever have an experience with a TV show like Chernobyl ever again. Truly amazing, but then again, I'm willing for my mind to be changed. And now let's get into the top and the worst. Now, I'm not gonna even do a top 3 because what's the point with only 3 TV shows? I'm just gonna name my favorite one and my least favorite one. And as you may have guessed, my least favorite's Invincible. I mean, Invincible's not even that bad. I gave it a 6 out of 10. Like, it's not even the lower half category, but it's just because I haven't really watched anything else that there's nothing else to give in this spot. But you know, the award has to go to someone. And consequently, number 1 we have Chernobyl. Once again, no, I don't think this comes as any surprise, so there you go. And I won't be doing any mentions either, like honorable mentions, because what am I gonna say? You know, 3 things again. Once I feel like I shouldn't even be reminding this. I'm treating you guys way too dumbly. But let's get into the stats, which also no stats. 3 things. Ooh, what? Oh my god, why am I doing this? Anyways, let's just cut to the anime. So on to anime, the one thing that I actually planned about doing on this channel, because honestly when I first created my channel I just wanted it to be an anime review channel, but it kind of branched off from there and I don't, you know, regret where I am now either way. So starting off, the first anime I reviewed on this channel being Dr. Stone Stone Wars. And honestly, Stone Wars was good, but it didn't do anything spectacular, and it's definitely not as good as the first season. It loses a lot of the wonder in that aspect, but mostly because of how choppy the execution is. But overall, I still feel like if you enjoy the first season, you'll enjoy this one. The next anime I reviewed was The Promised Neverland, and man, this is probably the most disappointing anime I've reviewed ever. It's just, I give it a 2 out of 10, and it probably deserves a 1 out of 10. I think the only reason that really differentiated it is because the content of the manga, at least it was there, at least they didn't cut out everything, so that's, I think, warrants it from being the worst thing ever. But still, it was definitely the most butchered adaptation I have ever seen in my life, and I thought you couldn't get any bad than Tokyo Ghoul. Anyways, on to the next anime, being Attack on Titan, Season 4 Part 1, and currently Season 4 Part 2 is already airing, but Season 4 Part 1 I thought was truly amazing, a 9 out of 10. I almost gave it a 10 out of 10, but I feel like a few inconsistencies here and there definitely holds it back, but it's definitely the closest thing to a 10 out of 10 I can give for an anime, honestly. Actually, there might be one thing closer, but I'll get to that later. Jujutsu Kaisen Season 1 also aired, and I also reviewed that. And JJK was definitely like the new bad boy on the block. Once it aired, everybody was in love with it. You know, everybody started doing JJK content and whatnot. And I personally didn't think it's as amazing as people said, like this new, the best shonen out right now. I think it was 7 out of 10, and personally, I probably should have given it an 8 out of 10 because it doesn't really feel like it should belong in the same category as like Dr. Stone Stone Wars. But JJK's like first half of the season didn't really captivate me. I only really got interested in this story when they got onto the second half with like the training arc and Todo and Yuji. That's when I really started to fall in love with the series. But before then, it was just kind of like an average shonen to me, and because of that, 7 out of 10. My Hero Academia Season 5 was the next thing I reviewed, and Season 5 was I think the only thing on my channel that I covered completely from start to finish. Actually, not start to finish. I think I missed a few episodes, but who cares about them? I did like 90% of the series on this channel on Supernova, or just on its own chapter reviews or episode reviews, and 7 out of 10, yeah, definitely feel like it. It's definitely by far the worst My Hero Academia season to air for a number of reasons, but I still don't think it's as bad as everybody's claiming, like the trashiest season and whatnot. But next season's definitely going to be the craziest. And you know, one thing I always find weird about is that My Hero fans will always hype up the next season when it's going to be like, it's the best season, and then the next season comes out and it's like average. The same thing happened with Season 4. I remember I had already read the manga and I was hyping it up too. I'm like, overall arc is going to be amazing, and then overall arc came along and then it was, you know, it wasn't really that mind-blowing. Same thing here on the MVA came out, as well as the Class A vs Class B. I was hyping that up as well, but then it came out and then it wasn't really that spectacular, so I might have to lower my expectations down a little bit for the next arc, but who knows. Anyways, after that, I did Tokyo Revengers, the first season, and Tokyo Revengers was pretty cool. Definitely a lot of problems with it. The main thing being Takemichi. Oh my god, he is so annoying. And the whole age thing, why they're all in middle school, I think Moist Critical pointed that out too, and I have to completely agree with his point. They should at least be in like high school or college, you know. But 6 out of 10, yeah, I don't think Tokyo Revengers is as good of an anime as everybody claims it to be. Like, people are holding it up on the same pedestal as Jujutsu Kaisen, saying like it's the other best new gen, but it's not really in my opinion. And then after that, I reviewed Monster. Monster, I gave a 7 out of 10. And Monster is definitely the deepest story, along with Attack on Titan, that I reviewed on the channel. It's truly amazing, and it surprises that how, you know, what's the term? How early it was released. It was like in the 1990s or early 2000s, but it's crazy how well it aged, and Monster still holds up today. And honestly, if you're the type of guy to look back at series and really like analyzing, Monster is the dream for you. But regardless, even though it's so well and so deeply written, I don't think that really makes up a series. I might make a whole other video talking about this topic, but my opinion, 7 out of 10 will suffice, because even though it's deep, it does fail in a few other categories. And now I want to review some of my anime movies that I watched, and some people will say that this doesn't really count, but anime movies, in my opinion, are both a movie and an anime, so I'll do it in both categories. Wolf Children, I don't really have much to say more than the movies. 9 out of 10. The Demon Slayer movie, also not really much to say compared to the movies. 6 out of 10, and Blame, a 6 out of 10. So this leads me to the bottom 3. Let's talk about that first. Starting with the mentions, the only thing I think worth mentioning here is Blame, because Blame is just actually, I don't even think Blame is worth a mention, just because it's a lot better than the manga is. So yeah, Blame is not even going to be mentioned. I don't think I have anything to mention for the bottom 3. Let's move on straight into number 3, being Demon Slayer, the movie Mugen Train. Now, Demon Slayer, the movie Mugen Train, I was really hyped for, and I definitely thought it was going to be like a 7 or 8 out of 10. But and I mean, a lot of people did definitely like it. Chris Stuckman liked it, especially the anime community really liked it, and Japan really liked it. It was like one of the high-selling movies ever over there. So, you know, congrats if you liked it. But in my opinion, it, like I mentioned before, it just suffers a lot from the exposition issues. Next at number 2, we got Tokyo Revengers Season 1. And I thought it was okay, but in my opinion, it's way too overhyped, and the story's interesting, but it's not really that unique, you know? And finally, at number 1, we have The Promised Neverland Season 2. I don't think anybody expected anything less. Like, Promised Neverland Season 2 is definitely by far the worst anime to come out that I reviewed on the channel, or even last year. So yeah, one of the worst things. No debate really there. And now let's get into the stats. Here's the graph of what my reviews look like so far, and it looks quite lopsided, you know, 7, 6, 9s, and 2s. I didn't really give any other ratings, mostly because, you know, there's very few anime that I reviewed this year. But yeah, overall, my averaged out to be 6.6, which is a little high, but still, you know, I'm fine with it. So yeah, that's it with animes. Let's move on to mangas. So compared to the anime, which I only did 10 in this year, the manga I only did 7, which is still reasonable. You know, I didn't really start this until like the middle of the year. So this year I definitely, once again, hope to do a lot more. Starting with the first manga I reviewed was Attack on Titan, which was 9 out of 10. Just like with the anime, I feel like it's truly amazing, but a lot of things hold it back, especially the ending. I made a whole video about the ending and the whole controversy surrounding it, but in my opinion, yeah, Attack on Titan would have probably been a masterpiece, but even though it doesn't make it like a 1 out of 10, the ending alone, it definitely does still make an impact, because in my opinion, endings are pretty important. Anyways, after that, I reviewed The Flowers of Evil, and The Flowers of Evil was truly a 1 out of 10. If anybody ever tells you, oh, this series, trash, 1 out of 10, show them Flowers of the Evil and they will change their mind, because this was one of the worst things I have ever laid my eyes upon, and probably the worst thing. If I made like an overall worst thing that I've ever seen of this year, Flowers of Evil would definitely take the cake. It was so bad, and I don't feel like talking about it anymore, so let's get on to Jujutsu Kaisen Volume 0. Now, JJK Volume 0, I did it mostly in preparation for the movie, and it might seem a bit late considering when I first read Volume 0, I was already caught up with the story, and chronologically, you should probably read Volume 0 before you get into the Shibuya incident arc, or even the Gojo Past arc, whatever it's called, but I did it anyways, and Volume 0 in my opinion is pretty average, definitely not comparable to the main series, mostly because of how short it was. I feel like if they had lengthened it out a little bit, it would have, been a bit better, but then again, it's supposed to be only one volume. You can't really do much in that either way. So 5 out of 10, let's move on. Silent Voice. Silent Voice, I give a 9 out of 10, and A Silent Voice was truly something else. I remember watching the movie many years ago, and it's one of my favorite all-time movies. I love the movie so much, and that's why I wanted to read the manga, and it's just as good. And if anything, I feel like I should recommend anybody who loved A Silent Voice to read the manga as well, because it expands on a lot of things that you wish the movie expanded on. For example, some of the characters and whatnot, but it's still amazing, and regardless, definitely go read it if you love the original movie. After that, I reviewed Blame. Now, what a change of pace. From 9 out of 10 to a 2 out of 10. Blame was a disappointment, to say the least. I was really looking forward to Blame because I remember I read Blame right after One Piece, and I've heard a lot of great things about Blame and the atmosphere, and I really dug the whole person lost in this super giant megastructure and has to do stuff and whatnot. But Blame was literally all that. It didn't have anything else. The story was convoluted. The characters had no purpose to them. The artwork and the atmosphere is all it had going for it, and that's why I give it a 2 out of 10. Next at next thing I reviewed is Girl on the Shore. Girl on the Shore was also a 2 out of 10, and it's very similar to Flowers of Evil, except it actually has some sort of purpose instead of just being I can't even describe Flowers of Evil, but you get what I mean. Instead of just being like kids self-destructing and whatnot, it's actually kids learning from something. And I can at least give it that. It's my bad. I can at least give it that. So, Girl on the Shore, definitely, I don't think it's as bad, like as a 1 out of 10, but it's not as good as everybody says. And this is also an unpopular opinion, considering I think the general consensus is that it's really good. Considering this is the same author as Pun Pun, of course, people thought it was going to be good, but in my opinion, it just wasn't. But I'm still going to read Pun Pun regardless. And finally, the last manga I reviewed of the year is Fire Punch. And I remember reading Chainsaw Man, and I absolutely love Chainsaw Man. I'm really looking forward to the anime, so I decided why not read Fire Punch as well, his other creation. And damn, people were really right. Fire Punch is a lot more brutal than Chainsaw Man, and Fire Punch is probably one of the most brutal manga I've read. It's really dark, and it's really grim, and it's really bleak. But Fire Punch definitely has a special quality to it, so I'll give it a 7 out of 10. Even though it does feel rushed in some places, and it's definitely not as good as Chainsaw Man, I still feel like it has its own unique something, as I'd call it. So anyways, on to the bottom 3. I'm not going to even give any mentions, considering there's only 7 in total, so I'm just going to straight away go to number 3, Blame. Like I mentioned, it might be an unpopular opinion, but regardless, I still think it's just an empty shell. Number 2, we have Girl on the Shore. Girl on the Shore at least tried to do something, but failed miserably, and is surprisingly very not safe for work. If I had toned down on that a bit, it probably would have made this list. And then at number 1, we have Flowers of Evil. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else that really takes this cake. Definitely the worst manga I've ever read in my life. So let's get on to my top 3. Once again, skipping the honorable mentions. Number 3, we have Fire Punch. Fire Punch was just a unique story, and it's glad and refreshing to see a story like this that's just so chaotic but so organized. It's definitely a style I really love from Fujimoto, and I'm really looking forward to where he goes next with Chainsaw Man Part 2. Then at number 2, we have Attack on Titan. I mean, it's Attack on Titan. Is there anything that could be said? And then finally at number 1, which is A Silent Voice. And A Silent Voice is the closest thing to an out of 10 I'll probably ever give, like I mentioned before. Yeah, Silent Voice is so amazing. I should probably give Silent Voice a 10 out of 10, but the only thing that really holds it back is a few emotional moments, and a few characters don't really get developed on, but aside from that, it's truly perfect. So yeah, let's get onto the stats. This is how the graph looks like. Just like with the anime, it's quite a disparity. There's not really much of a flow between rankings, but makes sense. I either reviewed stuff that was bad, or I either reviewed stuff that was alright or good. So, I mean, if I read more, especially this year, like I'm planning to, it should probably look a little bit more even. And overall, all of this averages out to a perfect 5, which is, just what I want. Having a pretty average rating seems pretty fitting. So yeah, that's it with the manga then. Let's move on to my final thoughts. Psych, bonus review time, this time for Supernova. And the reason I'm making a whole different category for my chapter reviews and Supernovas is because my manga reviews and anime reviews, I only covered stuff that I actually finished. So there's a lot of stuff that I've been reading over the course of the year that haven't finished yet, and I want to take this time to acknowledge them and probably give my top 3 and bottom 3 for that. So if anything, this is probably the most truest category because all of these things have all released stuff this year, so there you go. But the only disclaimer here is that I will only be covering them from the point I started reviewing them. So, for example, One Piece, although I started like halfway through the year or towards the end of the year doing on Supernova, I won't be covering any of its January 2021 content all the way to like June, for example. I'm only doing it for when I actually started it, which was like episode 1000. So, there you go. And let's begin with our first one, being Dr. Stone. Dr. Stone was one of the very early ones, and the arcs that Dr. Stone covered were like the battle against Stanley. That was truly amazing. The whole where everybody was getting massacred and Suika was the only one. Like that was some of the highest stakes I've seen in Dr. Stone, and one of the highest highs as well. Following that, we had the whole arc with Suika being alone and trying to, save everybody. And once that was done, we had the whole Europe travel arc where everybody was, going around Europe and getting all the materials. And then currently, we are now at the moon arc where everybody's trying to go to the moon. So we're already in the final arc. Crazy how much has happened over Dr. Stone, and I'm glad to see where it goes next. So for My Hero Academia's manga, we started off with the Deku Rogue arc where he's, catching all the criminals and whatnot. And then he was, got brought back. And then we also saw a little bit of Star and Stripe, a hero who had to die. And I'm still pissed off that they killed off such a cool character so early after introducing her. And then currently on the arc we are on is like the Trader arc, or like the prep for the final war, I guess you could say. And looking back at it, not much happened in My Hero Academia. Most of the stuff was just there, and that's surprising considering that this series was weekly, but oh well. And I'm gonna have to agree, My Hero Academia definitely did fall off a bit this year. It's not as good as it was last year's, and you can definitely tell the author is rushing it, so hopefully next year he takes his time and gives us a satisfactory or a great ending. Next for Jujutsu Kaisen manga, we started this whole thing with Yuta appearing and fighting Yuji, and then from there we had the Zenin slaughter. That was probably my favorite highlight of Jujutsu Kaisen of this year. That was something next level. I remember when that chapter came out, I was so excited about it. And then after that, we had the whole chapter where Yuji and Megumi had to go to that one dude. I forgot his name already, but you know who I'm talking about. And then currently on the arc we're on right now is the start of the Culling game, so not much happened aside from the Zenin slaughter. I did love that, but most of it was pretty bland. And then Mashle. Mashle was the only series I actually dropped this year, or put on hold. And looking back at it, I still don't think I'm going to continue it just yet. I'm going to probably let it stack up to chapter 100, or maybe 110, and then pick it up again. So let's let it cook for a little bit. But for the time I was reviewing Mashle, we had the whole Masters and Margaret fight, and then we had the whole war against Zero. So some of the biggest chapters of Mashle were released while I was reviewing it, but still, I was not pleased. And Mashle is truly dropped in stock, as I would say. So next for Spy X Family, not much also happened for Spy X Family considering this was like bi-weekly, but we had the whole boat mission thing, and which was cool, Spy X Family definitely needed an arc like the boat mission. Everything up until then was kind of cutesy and whatnot, but let's be honest. If you compare the boat mission arc, which is probably one of the better arcs, one of the best arcs of Spy X Family, to one of the best arcs of like Hunter x Hunter, like the Chimera Ant arc, it does not hold a candle. So they could have definitely worked on making that arc a bit more better, but I am definitely excited to see what Spy X Family has in store for this year. So next for One Punch Man. One Punch Man is the one thing I'm excited to talk about. We started the whole thing with the Cadre destroying the heroes, and following that we had Awakened Garo finally showed up, and as well as that, did Blast show up this year? Actually no, I think Blast showed up last year, but yeah, Awakened Garo showed up, and then finally at the end we're on these crazy DBZ Dragonfall fights with like Flashy Flash and Platinum Sperm, and everything's crazy at this point in One Punch Man, and it's so, I gotta give Murata and One credits because of how well One Punch Man has been able to captivate its audience. From the Tatsumaki and Psycho Sorochi fight to the Cauteries and stuff, to Awakened Garo, to Platinum Sperm. It has been non-stop action for like the past 2 years, so One Punch Man is truly amazing. And aside from the manga, we also had a few webcomic chapters this year, but only like 4. The main things to say here is that the Dr. Kusina stuff and the tension rising between the new heroes and the Hero Association. But I do wish they continue the webcomic a bit more. But now that I look back at it, I think one might just be giving up on the webcomic, considering how well the manga is doing. He might just be like, oh well, just give up on it. I'll just continue on the manga from now on and continue my story from there. But I would definitely like him to continue the webcomic as like a rough copy, so then we can give him feedback and he can improve on it for the manga, because that's always necessary. But now, on to Record Ragnarok. Record Ragnarok saw the full fight of round 6, I believe. Yeah, we started all the way from the beginning of round 6 to the end of round 6, as well as the start of round 7. So quite a lot happened, and Record Ragnarok was also pretty crazy, pretty cool. The Buddha fight, I think I mentioned all I really wanted to mention in my round 7 predictions, so there's not really much to say here. And then we have the One Piece anime. One Piece was the one thing I finished, and I started like I think September or something, and I started right before episode 1000, so I was pretty close. But most of the stuff that I reviewed was just them fighting in Wano. Nothing important happened, so yeah, mostly just bland fighting. The One Piece manga, however, had a lot of development, so if you're here just for the anime, skip this part, spoilers. But King and Queen were defeated, that was surprising, and Jack and Paris were also defeated, so that means all the Toby Roppo and the All-Stars have been defeated, meaning the only people left are the Yonkos, Big Mom, and Kaido. So I can definitely expect this year to be the end of the Wano Country arc, so I'm really hyped to see how they're going to finish off this arc with the whole battle between Luffy and Kaido, and how they're going to lead on to the next arc and where our adventure takes us next. So I'm super excited for that. So that marks the end of all my Supernova stuff. I did mention a couple things like what was it? The My Hero Academia season, because I already reviewed that in my anime review stuff. So anyways, on to my bottom 3. A few mentions. I think the One Punch Man webcomic is the only thing I gotta mention, mostly because of how infrequent it is. And yeah, some people can say, he just doesn't have time, but really it doesn't take a lot of time. But then again, he can do whatever he wants. It's his series. And then number 3, we got Spy X Family. Spy X Family, I only put this in this place because not much happened. Even though I like the chapters overall, the whole arc has been pretty okay, pretty average. And then number 2, we have the One Piece manga, and I think this should come as no surprise, even though it's a bit controversial if you see in my videos. Mostly because One Piece manga chapters have consistently always ranked low for me, mostly just because of how cluttered they are and unfocused. But yeah, that's why I give it a number 10. Not number 10, a number 2. And then finally, my worst pick is Mashle. And it's the reason my worst pick, because I dropped it. It's the only one I dropped, in fact. So there you go. But Mashle overall had just lost his touch. I liked his early on chapters, and I saw it had a lot of potential. But after reading those like war chapters, it just kind of just feels so rushed. So I don't even know if I'm going to pick it up, but I'll probably definitely try. Anyways, on to the top 3. Let's start off with the mentions. Jujutsu Kaisen definitely deserves a mention. Its season 1 was just not season 1. Its manga was truly spectacular. The whole Zenin arc stuff was really cool. Though My Hero Academia manga, I think, also deserves some recognition, mostly because of it trying to take some risks with Deku, even though I feel like it should have done a lot more with this character. At least they tried. So anyways, on to number 3, we have the Dr. Stone manga, mostly because of how crazy that one arc was where they were fighting Stanley, and everything that's built up to the Moon arc has been super amazing, so number 3, it definitely deserves that. Number 2, we have Record Ragnarok. I feel like the Buddha vs. Hajime was pretty interesting, super cool, and this whole Quincy Hong, I'm loving this character already, so I'm definitely looking forward to where this match goes next, so definitely number 2. And then finally, my top pick from all the Supernovas is One Punch Man. Is there any surprise here? One Punch Man has had such a great run. Like I said, for the past like 2 or 3 years, One Punch Man has been so solid, so it definitely does deserve this title here. So yeah, I think that's all I gotta say. There's not much stats to point out here, averages, so let's move on to my actual outro and future plans. So starting off with some future plans. For movies specifically, I want to work on and review on a lot of the sequels of movies that I've already reviewed. For example, High School Musical 2, since I already watched the first one. I also want to do a lot of reboots and like what do you call them? I forgot the name, but you know what I'm talking about. Like 12 Angry Men 1997, I want to do that as well and compare it to the original movie. And in general, I just want to continue having more diversity in my movies, having just a wide collection of horror, comedy, dramas, you name it. A few examples I want to review recently are Memories of Murder. I want to do that recently. Ocean's 11, Minari, The Room. All of these movies, you can look forward to them. Hopefully sometime early this year. For TV shows, I just want to make this a main part of my channel because TV shows for 2021 at least, we're just kind of starting off. But I want to do a lot more of them this year. A few examples being Black Mirror, Mr. Robot, Mindhunter. I would really want to do those ones as well, so expect those as well. For animes, I don't really have a particular goal. I think I've already kind of set a standard for animes on my channel. But a few things you can look forward to are the Chainsaw Man anime whenever that airs. Bleach, I really want to do Bleach because now that I've reviewed One Piece last year, doing Bleach would finally acquire me all kind of like the Infinity Stones, all three of the big three. So once I can do that, I can finally brag about that. So, and also Vinland Saga I heard is pretty good, so I also want to do that. In terms of manga, I just in general want to read more manhwas. I think manhwas just seem super interesting to me, and I think the first one I want to start off with is Solo Leveling, since that recently finished. So I want to make that like my gateway, and I think that's a gateway for most people. So hopefully it's good, Like I mentioned in my the manga section, I think I also want to read Punpun, Oyasumi Punpun, or Goodnight Punpun as you could call it, mostly because I read A Girl on the Shore and I've heard a lot of great things about Punpun, so I'm really looking forward to it, as well as Akumetsu. I think Akumetsu is another kind of like Death Note type, so I really am into those types of mastermind stories and lots of brain mind games, so I'm also looking forward to that. So to end off, I have one big announcement to make is firstly, I will be discontinuing my Supernova series, and oh no, I know this might seem as a surprise considering Supernova was supposed to be like a solution to my previous chapter reviews. Remember when I made my channel update, I said I wanted to continue doing chapter reviews, but I just didn't have time. That's why I did Supernova, but as I've realized over the months is that I just don't find myself enjoying Supernova reviews that much. I enjoy it much more doing regular movies and animes and manga reviews. Those are a lot more enjoyable to me, and in general I've had this kind of dilemma over the past couple of months, is that by doing Supernova reviews and reviewing chapters like weekly on the weekly basis, it kind of just makes it feels a story feel a little bit stale. Like I find it best when I read stories blind and just kind of binge a bunch of chapters together, and by doing them weekly and forcing myself to find the flaws and whatnot in the recent chapters, it just feels too tiring. Like for example, a lot of like One Piece flaws, pacing and whatnot might seem problematic on the weekly basis, but when I read them all together, it doesn't really seem that big of a problem. So that's a clear example of how Supernova is really damaging my experience with reading and watching in general. So that's why I want to discontinue it. So hopefully you guys are on board with this. I'll probably occasionally post videos whenever something big happens, like the Zenin slaughter, but aside from that, it's mostly just going to be movies, animes, and whatnot reviews. In terms of goals for this channel, I want to make it my sub goal to be 100 by the end of the year, which won't seem like a lot, but personally my channel doesn't really seem to grow that big compared to others, so I feel like 100 is a decent goal in like 12 months. And I also want to have at least one video with over 1,000 views. I almost achieved that with my Record of Ragnarok video that got like 500 reviews super quickly, so hopefully if I can get the algorithm on my side, I can get over 1k views, so that's my goal. And in general, I just want to at least make one non-review related video every month, since now that I'm discontinuing Supernova, I feel like it might be a little stale if I continue just doing reviews on reviews on reviews for months and months and months. So every now and then to break it up, I might do like a tier list or ranked or a let's talk. So yeah, look forward to that as well. And I guess that concludes this video, and the one last message I just gotta say is thank you all for joining me for this year. 21 subs. I did not imagine getting this much at all. And copyright has also been a big issue, but I persevered. So once again, thank you all, and I hope you enjoy this video, and I'll catch you for 2022. Thanks for watching.